Let's say I'm alive. So the title is just talk number 2 of hacking the mind, and just a metaphor. It's really the same talk I quite often give, with a little bit different way of looking at it, looking at the mind as a structure that we might not even know that there's anything there that's hidden, but there is, and it's very much like sometimes the Trungpa Rinpoche called it the bureaucracy of ego, because it's like some kind of a structure that's inviolable. You can't get into it because it's protecting itself, because it does not want to be seen. Why doesn't it want to be seen? It's not real. There's no solid being anywhere. But it sure looks like it. And that's protected. That secret, that open secret, is protected by a structure, or by a mainframe, whatever computer language you want to use, that is a structure that has all kinds of guards and everything. And those guards are our opinions, our ideas, our beliefs. In particular, our beliefs about anything. Any belief stops the awareness from penetrating that, from seeing deeply. So it's not that you couldn't use psychoanalysis or some other kind of structure that would use the conceptual mind or the storytelling mind to go down into something. You could. But it might be a little difficult to understand there's no solid being who has a problem. The problem is, the problem wants an identity. It wants someone to have welcomed and protected. So again, the way to deal with that, the way to hack that, is to not particularly use some kind of a technique, although even sitting meditation, shikantaza, is a technique. Very simple. Say it over and over again. Sit down, hold still, watch what moves. Because what moves is the sentries around the fortress of ego. Watch them. Don't do anything with them. If you try to go in and take them out, if you go to war with them, they have more resources, to continue to use that kind of a metaphor. And they function with each person in so many different ways. There's no one formula. That's why the shikantaza, or just precisely this, is the formula. And since body mind are imputed, was one of the sneaky pieces of propaganda that the ego uses, was that the mind is one thing and the body is something else. Separate. Anytime the ego, the self-centered mind, can separate things, it will, as they say, divide and conquer. It will do that. It will make it so you can't deal with both ends of it. So you'll join one. You'll join one. Whatever shows up, you'll look at the polarity and you'll join one. So it's always about the awareness that arises in that open dimension, that open space. Shikantaza. As I often say, when you sit down and hold still and you sit symmetrical, like so, eventually, in 10 minutes, 10 years, you're going to see the very area that's been shutting down. You will begin to see weaknesses in the structure of ego, which is kind of it might show up as an inkling that there's no solid self, that you're not solid. When that's partial, or when there's insights into that, depending on the strength of your awareness practice, you could either be kind of interested or excited about that because you feel like something's coming apart, and if your sincerity is powerful enough, your intention is powerful enough, you won't do anything with it. You won't try to crank it up. You won't get a credential from it. You just see it. Whereas if you don't have a strong sitting practice, it can be terrifying. If any of you read the book by Susan Segal called Collision with the Infinite, it's a woman who had a spontaneous realization And of course, she didn't have a good connection with a meditation group or teacher. She practiced a little bit of meditation. Has anybody here read that? Yeah, a few people. And again, I'm not necessarily recommending it, but if you could, you could read it. She didn't really have a teacher, so therefore her understanding from this way it looks here isn't complete. I think she passed away before it was complete. Pretty hard to do this without a strong foundation of awareness. If it happens spontaneously, sometimes people like Ramana Maharshi went into retreat for 20 years. Byron Katie did something similar to that, and it took her 15 years before she actually came up with a way to teach what she had done. But she doesn't teach meditation, or at least she didn't. I think she does now, because she runs into so many people that are suffering. Probably kind of just slowly occurred to her that maybe they should just sit down and do nothing. She's quite clear, seems to be. I haven't met her. So what I'm saying is just, you may become a Buddhist. You may just study Buddhism. That's up to you. It's your idea of what you need to do with this, whether you need to become ordained, or whether you need to just practice meditation. None of my business. It could be my business. If you come closer, then I'll relate to it as it is. But there's nothing to correct. When we start to get into right and wrong, then immediately the whole idea of trying to hack into something, you have presumptions, preconceptions, and ideas, and that will stop you from being able to go deeply into this. And if you always say headway in that area, you probably are not going to get a credential saying, yes, keep going, you're on the right path. It's not that. It begins to, as soon as you see the relativity of it, the relativity starts to stop supporting your search. So it's really, as Trungpa Rinpoche said in the title of one of his books, Journey Without Goal. It's open-ended. There's no beginning. There's no ending to anything. If you think there is, you'll suffer. So the idea, the metaphor of hacking something seems to work. It's like that. There's some kind of a closed system, personal oligarchy that does not want to give up any power. The ego does not, your imaginary, pretended, imputed self doesn't want to give up. And your Buddha nature is covered by that dictator. And you could say the dictator's here, the dictator's here. Unlikely the dictator's here. The dictator can't, there's too much space there, too much room there. So it needs to be feared or argued with. Paranoia and terror. This is not afraid. This is not afraid. So this is what you're doing when you sit down and hold still, face the wall. Body, mind are not separate, just look like it. And when you sit down and do that over time, depending on your own style, your own form of belief, disbelief, conclusions, concepts, opinions, and so on, you'll begin to see those. And if you can just observe them without adding on any further laminations, sometimes we see those come up and then we think we have to do something about it. You don't have to do anything about anything. You don't have to do anything about anything. The whole idea of there being some kind of a time frame that you have to do something about something, just a misunderstanding. It's interesting that if you really begin to see that, you know exactly what to do. You don't need to check with your next door neighbor. You don't need to check with your mate or your mom, dad, brother, sister, dog, cat. You don't have to check with anything. You know. And that feeling of knowing quite often gets mixed up with not knowing because it's so here. And this doesn't see two different things. This doesn't even see. It can be very challenging to be working in that area and begin to realize that you're not going to know, you're not going to have what you've been looking for. Because what you've been looking for is not what it's cracked up to be. Changes, and this is why the ego mind has such difficulty with it, because it wants to be included in that. The dictator wants to even make I'll be really good. Just let me in on it. I won't cause any more trouble. Just let me be the prime minister. I'll let you be the boss. It says to your Buddha nature. And I'm not saying there are other techniques. There's practice quite a few myself. There's the creation completion practices of the Tibetan lineages. There's several different forms of that. There's all kinds of deity yoga practice, which is giving your wisdom mind, your Buddha nature, a form so it can begin to manifest, so you can begin to talk to yourself. And Tibetan lamas would disagree with me, probably. I mean, they've got hundreds, thousands of years of culture to promote or defend. And same thing with any other way of working with the mind, whether it's Soto Zen, Rinzai Zen, or any of the Chinese lineages, or the Theravadins. Everybody kind of thinks they're right, that they have what the teaching should be. So I don't know if they can do that. I'm just saying that, speaking to you personally, that you shouldn't do anything unless you have to. And if you have to do something, you'll know that by watching all the things you don't have to do. So I say, look at the things you don't have to do, and then look, if death comes without warning, this body will stop giving you some kind of a support for your consciousness. You may have to do something about this. You may have to spend some time sitting down and watching what continues to insist on being somebody. The teaching, of course, is everything is empty of itself. And so that's the teaching. But when you see that, everything is it's already completely full of itself. Anytime you make a statement, you create something else. It's polarized. It's a polar bear. Whatever happened to Polaroid cameras?
They came back.
They did? Yeah, I bet they're costly though. Yeah. You have a question?
From Shoto at the monastery.
Yes.
He asks, is being awake more than being clear?
Yeah, if you use the word being awake in the sense of the Buddha's teaching, then yes, it's not separate from ignorance. Buddhas and sentient beings are not two different things. Being completely anuttara samyak sambodhi, the complete unexcelled enlightenment that's talked about in the sutras of the Buddha, are not separate from the completely separate situation of being in the middle of hell as Rudra. Not separate. Nothing is abandoned. Nothing is joined, and nothing is ignored. There isn't anything else. It's promising, isn't it? Yes.
What's Rudra?
Rudra is a way that it's like the opposite of enlightenment. It's like complete control, power, warfare, just ignoring with intense passion, aggression, and ignorance that there's that there isn't anything but Buddha nature. So it's going the opposite direction. It's been used as an image here and there. Trungpa Rinpoche used it somewhat. I think it might be the first time I've used it, or maybe the third time. Fifth time. I can always tell when one of the numbers looks like a rabbit or a snail. Yeah. Yes. You have one?
Yeah, what was the word you used?
Rudra.
Rudra, is that Sanskrit or?
Rudra. I think it's Sanskrit. Do you know the Tibetan?
Sanskrit.
Do you know the Tibetan for Rudra?
No, I don't.
Is it related to Anudra?
It's Anudara is none further. Anudara Samyak Sambodhi. No, it's
It's not part
Rudra.
of that.
No, it's a different word. Rudra. What does it mean?
Anger.
See? The knower of the three times, including this one. That wink was a transcendental wink.
I feel so awake now. Thank you, yes.
Yeah, Rudra. That's why it's in hell. Other questions?
To hack duality.
Yeah, that's what you're hacking. You're going into that kind of a fortress of we're over here and you're over there and you're not getting in. That kind of a thing. So we need to, and the way you do that, you don't go to war with it. Just like you can't go to war with Amazon. Not the river, the big thing that's unhackable, partially unhackable. Yes.
Now, two questions. One off of Keenan's. Taking the hackable metaphor to something like, I hope we don't get in trouble, but Coke Industries, they were saying you can't boycott that because their products are in everything you use.
Right, yeah.
So if taking that metaphor to dependent origination, it's so vast. How can you hack anything?
I don't know. You don't have to if they keep dying off. One of them died.
So just wait.
Yeah, while you're waiting, face the wall.
You talked about,
I'll go somewhere else first. Hack this. Hack this. I mean, I'm not, I think it's great that, people hack into things that are eventually going to take over the world or whatever, like Mr. Snowden. I think that's good, but excuse me. But find out who this is, and you can. I'm just using a metaphor because there's all kinds of people that are really good at and have an ability to go into closed systems that are trying to hide out and protect themselves. Are able to use, rabbits and snails and bunny rabbits. Yeah, those numbers. They're able to go in, or the off and on switches. That's what it is. That's what Matt does, and that's what my son Aaron. He also is. Ones and zeros. Yeah. No threes. But 1 and 0 adds up to what? That's where I get headache. Yeah. But find out who this is, and because this, I'll say it like this: this is not separate from that. But you can't find that without joining some kind of an incredible, countless, called the 10,000 things traditionally, countless numbers of. Everybody you meet has a different kind of confusion and a different kind of sanity. So everyone is, it's just vast and unmanageable. But you have an opportunity, being born a living being, you can find out who this is. And anything that is happening to you at all, including this, supposed to happen. How do you know it's happening? It's happening. You're actually here. You're here. And you can be, not only can you be here, you can be really here. And that's how you actually begin to hack. You sit down right where you're at, or you sit down every morning at 7 o'clock and face the wall in your hallway or in your meditation hall or in your bedroom. Sit down, hold still, take nothing for granted, give nothing away, don't do anything with it. Just, you could say you're giving up something, you're eliminating everything else that normally would happen that time. You're eliminating that. You're just going to sit here and see what is basically what's happening, because that will tell you. A body may move. My body, every time I would holster, would start to ache because my situation, my ego does not want to be seen, and I never did see it. But and so it would make my knees hurt. I would get up. I almost swore just then, but I managed not to. So you can't see something that is unreal. If you see that what is trying to appear as someone on stage and trying to act as if you see a stage play, then it's unreal. So their ego is unreal. So it's not that you see the ego. That's why it's so difficult, because we keep looking for something to get rid of or transcend or something.
Is intention unreal?
Well, I think it's real as long as it lasts. So we have to start somewhere. So you intend to be with all things. We're gonna see what this is. It's like it's a mutual thing. You're a student of the Buddha's Dharma, as am I. Just bring this together and use that formula, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Use that to find out what this is. It's not that you couldn't find out what this is without that formula, but probably going to be more difficult. It would be like, say, I'm going to go canoeing without a canoe. Canoe do that? You probably could. Anybody with 2 arrows, 4 in each ear. So, I mean, it's a metaphor, it doesn't work, but it's like trying to, I'm not saying people couldn't do that or couldn't understand something, but without some kind of a teaching, it seems to be necessary to have, like we have, we're very lucky to have a 2,500-year-old tradition. It's not about believing in anything. It's about not looking away from something, but looking at whatever happens, look right at it and don't add on your opinions, ideas, judgments if you can. If you do add them on, then just look at the back end of them. Just add it on to that. I'm adding on. I'm not seeing what that is because I keep thinking of stuff about it. It's a good thing. It's a bad thing. I didn't do it. I did do it. She did it. They did it. It's because of this, because of that. You can tell how many times I've said that. Do I say it the same way every time? No.
I guess I'm wondering about intention of how, what is intention?
It's something you do over and over and over again. I intend to be with all things. Your job as a bodhisattva, which you've received the bodhisattva precepts, is to be with all things. And that's going to show up for you much differently than Raquel or Unyo or Doug. It's going to show up just differently. Just not right, not wrong, just your way of dealing with that. So like we were talking about in the interview, the disparity between this and that was happening. You don't have to put those together. You don't have to make anything work. You don't have to, whatever's happening needs to happen because it's causes and conditions bring that about. And it may irritate you, or you might think, I don't deserve this. Not that you would do that. But whatever happens, just, I'm not saying, oh, just be with it or just cave to it or something, but just watch the texture of those feelings come and go. Nothing lasts, especially things that look like they're solid, especially the fortress of ego that looks so solid. It's just invented. It's just a bunch of things laced together. And if you look right at it and don't believe it, don't disbelieve it, don't look away from it, it just unties itself. It's like the image, traditionally sometimes the knot of the mind just unties itself in midair just by your awareness. Buddha means awake. What? Awaken to what? Awaken to everything. Not easy because the ego mind, the self-centered mind, to fortify the defended and the protected area called ego, well, anything that happens, it will make something up about it. Well, they're trying to do this, but now you're trying to do that. Well, that's not going to work. Well, what were you thinking? Just listen to the stage play go on without jumping on stage. And if you do jump on stage, then just watch that, and you'll notice that you'll might be on stage for a while, and then you go right back to the front row again and watch some more. And then you'll watch this character come and that character come and go. The story may develop, it may make sense, it may not make sense. Don't conclude anything.
So the path, eightfold path, right effort. What is right effort if there is nothing to do, nowhere to go, and nothing to change?
Well, you got to do stuff.
Pardon? What did
You got to do stuff. It's along the line of the intention part. I think it has to do with that. So I think what we do, we tend to kind of hound ourselves, but I need to do something else, or because we're not getting some kind of feedback from whatever we're doing that says we're doing, we're constantly evaluating ourselves or judging ourselves. So I think right effort or right intention, which are very similar. The only ones I really talk about are the Shiva, Samadhi, and Prajna. Now, the whole 10 is just we're not in the fourth grade. We don't need all those other ones, I don't think. Now, I'm not saying that some people don't. People in 2,500 years ago who were 15 years old were students of the Buddha's Dharma probably needed all 10 of them. And we probably need to memorize them and do all that. But I think we say, sit down. Shila, discipline, sit down. Morality, just don't do anything but this. And then look at it. Samadhi, just look at it. And then wisdom or prajna or jnana, then just see the truth. Those are the three. But you have to start with sit down, hold still, and look. So that's the intention. And all of these tie together. The vow to be with all things is also an intention. I vow to be with all things. And you say it, if you do it, you can either do it unofficially, just do it on your own, or don't do it at all. You do whatever you like. Or if you do it officially, in other words, you decide to become a card-carrying Buddhist, then you can do that. And I would say, don't do anything else you have. You don't have to do that. Don't do it. Don't do anything. What is that called? Half. It's an A. Question?
Sometimes we work with the paramitas. What's the difference between the paramitas and the Eightfold Path?
Just more kind of guidelines or touchstones, so you can see generosity, patience. What are the other ones? Duty.
Generosity, discipline, patience, effort, meditation,
Wisdom.
wisdom. So it seems kind of like the Eightfold Path in a way. So but we work with the paramitas and the Mahayanas more. So what's really the difference?
I don't know. Maybe the paramitas are more of more to bring your awareness to those different aspects of the mind from the point of view of the path, of the Bodhisattva path, be with all things, and then the 10 or 8. What are they?
Fold Path.
So you have to look between the folds, see the pages. Does that help? It's about discipline and it's more parental. So whereas the Bodhisattva path is a little bit more towards adulthood. In other words, saying you need to really, if dependent origination, which the Buddha taught, is true, you really need to start working with dependent origination as soon as possible and see you need to help everyone. And if you keep putting this person first, if you are using the Eightfold Path, I'd say you don't need to do some of that, yes. And in that time, I think that teaching was very appropriate for that time. I'm not, disagreeing. I'm just saying for this time now, you need to look at it in a little bit different way. Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna, or each one of those are in the Eightfold Path. I think that's enough. Sit down, hold still, see what it is. And what is it? Not separate. Easy to say that. But to begin to see that is actually helped by your everyday situation, your post-meditation, your everyday life. Help other people. Don't just help people who, are Buddhist. We don't just help people who just need the only kind of help that you can give. Help people. Help them wherever they're at, help them. It doesn't mean that we're sitting here and I'm giving a talk and so I see somebody out there changing a tire in their car. I stop talking and go out and help them change their tire. We're not nuts. Of course, wouldn't that be a great teaching? Yeah, you know what he did next? He stopped in the middle of the Dharma talk. And he went out and he got his hands all dirty. What a teaching. What a teacher. Crazy. Very simple, ordinary situation. If you can help somebody, it'll come out of your awareness if you're not worried about being right, if you're not worried about impressing somebody, and if you're just not concerned about that, that's all extra. To know that you're not separate from anything and to function that way is not to know much at all. There's no credentials. You don't have to know what your intention is. You don't have to know whether Shila, Samadhi, and Prajna, or even that's something that happened 8 years ago, 8 miles ago, Eightfold Path ago. Yes.
Suzanne from the monastery has a question. He asks, do we have to care about what we're doing?
So I would say, somewhat. I think I follow what you're saying, but I'm also saying it might not show up in the conventional way. So there's a word used in Buddhism that's misunderstood. It's called dispassion. And sometimes it's sought when you have to not have any feelings about anything. And I would say that dispassion is about maybe your feelings are really, really intense about everything, but you're not fixated on them and you're not clinging to them. This is a wonderful open dimension that it's your birthright. You're already the Buddha. There's nothing to correct, nothing to fix. And so you may have really strong feelings. You may find that the things that 3 weeks ago evoked really powerful emotions or feelings, and today there seems to be fairly flat. And what is it? Aware. You're just aware of what's happening, and you're aware of the contrast. You're not aware of the rightness, the wrongness. Contrast. It's contrast. It's appreciation. Appreciate your life. Appreciate Milarepa. Appreciate those teachings. Appreciate. It means to be aware of something and don't object to it, don't agree with it, don't look away. And the feeling there can be you have no idea what's happening. You may have strong positive feelings about something. I often say, don't believe your thoughts. Don't believe your feelings either, but don't turn away from them as if, well, I'm not supposed to believe those. I don't mean that. I'm just saying, do nothing with it. Have the intention of emotion with no Post-it notes around it about what it means, who's having it, or what it's about, or what it should be or should be. Do nothing with it. Less is better.
Shoto from the monastery has another question. He asks, are we creating our own physical pain? How do we do that?
I think there's overlaps and underlaps of all of dependent origination. So there's probably some of that going on, but it's not a clear picture of this caused that. Dependent origination even rocks are breathing. And it might not be breathing the way you're breathing, but they're That's not a pretense. That's rocks. I'm not saying you have to go around and cry all over the mountainside. I'm saying it's not separate. Picking and choosing, it's a disease. It's a disease of a mind, with a mind that refuses to investigate. Very smug. Pride. We don't want to be part of everything or not separate from anything. We want to be some special person who understands. There isn't anyone to understand anything. All I have to do is think about rocks and that happens. This one happened to be granite. Is that Shoto? Do you understand, Shoto? Hack into it.
In looking at trying to be helpful to others, I find that I don't want to help people who I feel threatened by or have difficulty with. How can I hack that?
Just continue to look at it. Don't do anything with it. Just look at it. If we use the metaphor of hacking, it's not so much as someone using a computer in that way to use the very software or the very texture of the way the fortress is built to go in there. So I'm saying to taking that metaphor into working with the mind, use the way it's built out of awareness. So if you drop back, don't punt. But if you drop back and just watch, you will eventually, just out of persistence, you will be able to see the way this is created. And when you see the way it's created, you realize you're not separate from it. It will dismantle itself. It will unwind of its own. So all you have to do is that negativity is your opportunity to just watch that. Just be with that. It's not even a being with. It's just watch it. You're just aware of your feelings that maybe 3 weeks ago, 3 years ago, you were fighting with and trying to stop, or maybe you were supporting and trying to justify. Passion, aggression, ignorance, do nothing with it. Do it. Use your body to do that. You're a body worker. Sit down, hold still. Don't accept anything that occurs. Don't reject anything that occurs. Don't ignore, look away from anything that occurs. It's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of practice to just sit and watch what's happening, because it's just one indictment after another of the ego, and it does not want to, and it'll keep diverting all that to some other. But eventually, it gets worn out. It takes a nap. Big mistake on the part of ego. The wisdom mind does not sleep. Nothing sleeps. Wisdom does not sleep. Success and failure are ego words. Laura.
I'm still upset about you crying about the rocks, and I want to know what made you cry about the rocks.
Rocks. They rock. It's just emotion. It doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to the rocks. I'm just thinking about rocks, right? And that it'll start to happen again if I keep talking about it. You can't find anything that isn't completely if you look at it, you can't talk though. So you can't find anything that isn't flooded with the Buddha. That's a misunderstanding. There's absolutely no weakness there at all. So I don't feel bad about it. I don't. But that's not something you can just do or stop doing. No choice happening. Look at plants and rocks and buildings. And notice the way you'll elevate one thing over another. this person's better than that person because this person's whatever, meditator. This person's my friend, and this person over here irritates me. And then the extreme of that is thinking that there's some kind of basic difference between a living being and a tree, the human being and a tree. No, those trees are watching you, listening, feeling all the time. How do I know? I don't know. It's not conventional knowledge. Knowledge is something you get and then goes away as you get older. Wisdom is something you are. And you don't have no bragging rights there. You don't get to be a wise person. You think you're a wise person, you think you're enlightened, you're mistaken. It might be a high level of mistake. You still may be able to help a few people because they think you're wise. Further questions?
Earlier, you mentioned Susan Segal and Byron Katie and Ramana Maharshi, that they had a sudden something that they
Yes.
realized, but you said that you wouldn't know it, or that would be ego's story about it. So what was it about them that they had this unshakable shift that was recognizable?
No, it was shakable. That's why it took them a few years to clarify. And not saying there aren't other people that weren't able to clarify that. So it's causes and conditions are just, you can't trace them. They're so complicated. More about that if you have it. I have more to say, but I can't say it without you asking me.
Well, what was the difference between the moment before and then the moment after?
I can speculate. With Ramana, the way he talks about it in his, as far as he talks about it, is he came in from playing soccer or something, or football, and then collapsed on the floor of his. It was probably 17 or 18 or maybe younger. Collapsed on the floor and felt like he was dying, and he just went with it and died. But his body didn't die. He got back up and went to Tiruvannamalai in South India and went into a cave. And at that time, the society there supports the spiritual path. It does not particularly support the spiritual path, at least in that way here. But that happened to him in that culture, so there was a structure for it. He could actually go into a cave and people. This is a mendicant or a holy person, so they would feed them, help them. It won't happen here. The person he was able to probably wasn't much of a big deal. He just, I'm going to have to go sit down and look at this for a while. Luckily, the culture supported that kind of investigation. I think it was in there 20 years, and then people would come because people would hear about this person who was a saint in that tradition. There's pictures of him. He comes out and sits on a bench and just looks at people. He teaches, and he teaches also. His teaching basically was Atma-vichara, which is self-inquiry, and which is also similar to Shikantaza. It's who's looking at this? Who is it? And when it comes back me, then who is me? Well, that's I'm me. Well, who is that? So it's a constant going into the layers of identity. It's basically mistaken identity, no matter which tradition you're looking at. I don't know how that was for him, and then for other people, it has a similar kind of thing. But if there's no structure for it, then it tends to. In our society, it would tend you'd get medicated. I mean, somebody had some kind of difficulty like that or challenge.
Haldor,
But
You'd be given Haldol.
Haldol? Yeah. Give him Haldol. I think somebody said that in the halls of Montezuma, the Second World War movie. Give him Haldol. Further questions about this topic or anything? Mhm. Yes.
Do we have any identity?
I don't think in the conventional sense. The way I talk about it is if you're functioning as a three-dimensional apparent being who eats and sleeps and, and walks in the park, or, then there's a discontinuous identity that comes and goes. The ego doesn't like that. It's too spooky to not. So quite often if people have that, they might have depression. But if you don't do anything with it, then it's fine. You just have just as much identity as you need to do anything. I have to have some identity or I can't talk. But it's not real. So there isn't anyone that's talking. There isn't anyone that's feeling. There's feeling. There's much more feeling if there's no one having it. You don't have to share it with anybody. He chuckled. Further question? Did you have one?
You said wisdom doesn't sleep, and then you said something about ego taking a nap.
Mm-hmm.
How can you make ego really tired so it takes a long?
I don't know. It's kind of metaphorical. It's like I think ego kind of gets worn out of just trying to be somebody, convince, and it gets exhausting after a while to try to promote oneself or demote oneself. Same thing. Do a lot of block sitting. Or do a lot of daily sitting. One more question. Yeah, there. Another question, anyone? Very good.
Thank you. So we'll stand and dedicate the merit on the back of that sheet on the cushion.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san chi shi hu chi san hu sa mo go sa mo ko ja ho the 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
Feel everyone who is